Good evening and welcome to this week's episode of Sunday Night Live, your favorite automotive show where we talk about all those things that improve the customer experience at your stores. And every week we bring on the experts to share with us what they do or what they've done to help us all become better. And this week I've got one of my SDL brothers, Bob Charbeneau. And between the two of us, we're kind of old, because we've got 94 years of combined automotive experience. That's scary right there. But nonetheless, so we're going to reminisce over the last 50 years in automotive and what we've seen as some of the changes. And hopefully you'll find this entertaining and enlightening. So welcome to the show, Bob.
Glad to be here.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, and then we'll jump right in.
Okay, I'll try and run through it pretty quick. I've been working in automotive since I got out of the service in 1968 and had to have a job. And that was the only thing I knew how to do, was work on cars from working on them with my dad. When I was in the service, though, in Vietnam, I did bombs, rockets, missiles, and other assorted things that there's not a lot of work for. So I went to work for Sears, and I spent about almost 11 years with Sears. And during that time, I was a tire and battery installer. Then I was a technician for almost 2 years, got ASE certified in the second ASE certifications ever taken. Not in all of them, but I had 3 certifications. Then I did that for about a year and a half. And then I had a mentor that I ran into that said, "You're in the wrong job." And then I became what at that time was, I checked out all the cars and talked to the customers and sold the jobs. And then they made me the service manager, of a brand new store that was opening after about 6 months. Well, then I was working for a guy that knew nothing about automotive, but he was like, he had been the manager of Spain Sears stores, young guy, MBA in marketing. He was really very smart, but he knew nothing about automotive. And I would tell him that, and he really didn't appreciate that very much, because he was asking me to do things that I go, we don't need to do that. Well, that's when I became a back shop salesman. He goes, "You're not going to just check out the cars on front end. If they need work, all of those cars need work." He goes, "So you try and check out everything that you can, and we'll sell it." And then so I couldn't do that, as a new shop, but still it was too many. So he hired another guy. And so we were killing it. And then he called us in the office one day and he said, "Okay, there's a lot of stuff that you guys don't sell." And I said, you're talking about Tom, you're not talking about me." And he goes, "No, I'm talking about both of you. You sell a lot." And he said, "So here's what I want you to do. After about a half hour, 45 minutes after you talk to the customer, then I want Tom to call and as one of our assistant service managers and check and see how everything's coming. And if they had been told about things that needed attention, and kind of going through those things again." And when it's a different person, sometimes they've thought about it and they change their mind. And I said, "Well, if I can't sell it, Tom isn't going to sell it." And he goes, "All right." He goes, "Tom, you good with that?" And he goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Bob, you stick around. Tom, you get out there and start checking some cars." And he explained to me, he goes, "You know what? You do know a lot about automotive and a lot about cars. And obviously you do a really good job. But you know what? I have got 8 years of school. I've been through marketing for hundreds of stores." He goes, "I think I know a little bit more about that than you do, and a little more about customers. So here's what I want you to do. You listen to me, I'll listen to you, and we're going to get along just fine." And that guy was my mentor after he went to Chicago and moved on. Well, so that put me, after that, I was doing turnaround stores, opening new stores, or doing bad stores. Then, after that, I decided that, I needed more. I was 27 years old and I'd already run 3 auto centers. and Sears was a very stodgy company. You had to be auto center managers like in their 40s. So I decided that uh, if they weren't going to give me one of those jobs, then I was going to go find one. So right about that time, my dad got cancer. I quit Sears, had a bunch of money in my profit sharing because they were did really well back then, and I moved to Michigan to be with my dad. And then I had enough money for about 2.5 years, but I had a large entourage of cousins, so I was broke in 6 months. So I had to go to work. So I went to a big Sears store and told them what I did, and they said, that doesn't sound like you couldn't have, you didn't do numbers like that. I said, well, call the guy that's over all of California for the Sears stores. So he did. So they hired me. And then 6 weeks later, they took me to the group office, made a new job, and made me over all the 1,300 Bay Auto Centers. And so I did that for 6 months. And then I was told that I was a failure. It didn't work, and and the guy I worked for, where I liked a lot. He was 6'8". I'm 5'6". We looked like Mutt and Jeff going into the stores, and I was like kind of his assistant for the service side, and he did everything else. And they had never had a job like that. He goes, "Here's the deal." He goes, "You go in there, you know what to do." He goes, "You tell those guys what to do." And they shake their head, yes, sir. And you leave, and then they go, that little puppy doesn't know nothing, and they don't listen to you. He goes, so, I'm going to have to I'm going to have to take you out of that job. I said, well, great, because my dad, just passed away, and I'm going back to California. And he goes, well, wait a minute. He goes, I want to make a deal with you. He goes, you know what to do. There's 3 general managers that want you to come to work for them. He goes, I want you to get your best deal, negotiate, they'll pay you anything, and get your best deal, hold that job for 90 days, kick the crap out of the big stores that didn't listen to you, for 1 month. That's all you have to do. I will transfer you, pay you your move to California, $7,000 relocation fee. If you buy a house, we'll pay the points on it. I'll do everything and transfer you to wherever your guy out there wants you to go. I go, okay, that sounds pretty good to me. And so I did that. And obviously I turned that store and went back out there. But, it was my first failure. So it really hit me hard. And I thought, I talked to my guy out there, and he goes, well, Bob, you're going to have to wait till you're probably 40, 45, so that you had that seasoning where the guys will actually listen to you. And I'm going, nah, I can't do that. I didn't tell him that, because he had transferred me to Utah to do a turnaround in Salt Lake City or Murray, Utah. So I gave him a year, but during that year, 2 times a month, I called group managers that were the most successful that I knew in the Midwest that I had met, and that mentored them and asked them and kind of put a plan together from what they did that got them successful. Then I went to Montgomery Ward's and got hired as the assistant district manager. And so 2 weeks later, I'm showing at the district office or regional office for Montgomery Ward's, and I'm in the parking lot, and there's no cars. Well, I'm early, like always. And I'm looking, I go,
Military.
Looks like those doors are chained. And I'm going, those doors are chained. And nobody shows up. And I'm thinking, well, I'm not leaving until somebody's got to show up here. So a well-dressed guy shows up, and he's unlocking the chains. So I run up there, and I go, I think I talked to you when I interviewed a few weeks back. And he goes, oh yeah. I said, you hired me. I quit my job, and what's going on? And he goes, I don't know if I have a job. He goes, the Mobile Oil just bought us, shut down half of the regional offices to regroup, because the company was losing money, and you don't have a job. And I go, well, that's not very good. He goes, I'll tell you what, though, South San Francisco is a good friend of mine, the general manager there. and they have an auto center. It's a union auto center, but it's good size, does good, but they don't make any money or anything. He goes, go up and talk to him. He will hire you on the spot. And so I go up and I talk to Robert Brandt. He hires me on the spot, and he goes, okay, there's one problem. He goes, I already have an auto center manager, and he's been here so long, it'll take me a year to get rid of him. So you're going to be his assistant. And I go, what are you going to pay me? And so we agreed to an amount. I go, okay, I'll do that. Well, then a year and a half later, we did pretty good for a union store and deunitize the store while I was there, because I changed some compensation plans and stuff. So then they made me in charge of the 64 stores from Bakersfield to Anchorage, Alaska, and over through Nevada. So that was a learning experience. Okay, I learned how to manage, like going to the stores and stuff, but now you're talking about, a lot of stores. So I'm back to the drawing board again, but I was able to make it work. And then I think it was about a year and a half, I got promoted to the corporate office as technical training director. Then I became the marketing director, and then I became the operations manager. And then I was over everything for the last 3 years of my 8 years in Chicago. Then I saw the writing on the wall that Montgomery Ward's wasn't going to make it. Automotive did great, but nothing else did. And so, they were trying to disguise, taking profits from automotive. I made $40 million a year out of 340 stores net, which is like 7.5%, and so I thought I got to go. And so I left and started a consulting company, Tailored Resource, working with dealers. My brother worked at dealers. I had a lot of friends that worked for dealers, and I had talked to them all the time. By that time, I'd been in like 800 auto centers, around the country.
That's a hell of a history, Bob.
And every place I go into a dealership, I go into a body shop, I go into the biggest independent mechanical shop and the best tire store, just so I could see what people are doing all over the country. And so I thought, there's huge opportunity, because I talked to my brother and stuff. He goes, really, people come in, their car's broke. We fix it, send them down the road. And he goes, that's what we do. And so I thought there's an opportunity. So now that's my background.
That's a hell of a background. It's a lot of experience there. And, the customer back then was a little bit different than today. They seem to be more easygoing at the time.
Well, I think it was because they wanted their car fixed and the dealer had the upper hand, so they kind of felt, like your service advisors 50 years ago, my brother was really easygoing and everybody loved him. 3 of the guys that were there were old school. They told the customer what was going to happen and when they're going to get it. And if you don't like that, don't throw a fit.
That's a total change to today, because today everybody expects what they expect, which is way beyond reasonable, right? In many cases, what they expect today is way beyond reasonable, and it seems like nobody has patience anymore. I'm going to get to a couple of comments here. I don't want to fall too far behind. Robert Allen Carvel is our first one on the show tonight. Says, good evening from Atlanta, Georgia. Look forward to tonight. And Russell Hill. Hello, Bob C. and Paul M. This is going to be a good one. Bob is so talented and informative. Yes, I've learned that over a few conversations. Patrick Teshaw, good evening from Boston. Oh, I love Boston, particularly Mistral and Ostra and some of the other fun places.
Legal seafood.
Legal seafood there. I've been there as well. Mike Vogel says, good evening, Paul and Robert. 94 years plus 46 years from me. Yikes. Wow, we're some old dudes. Whoa, Lamont Harris came through as Lamont Harris, not LinkedIn user. Oh, that's right. Mike Vogel helped them fix that last time. Hello, hashtag SDL Brothers Lamont. Robert Allen Carvel, 40th year in automotive business here. Paul and Bob, I feel your pain. Russell Hill, my FixedOPS marketing brother. We would not be where the company is today if not for Bob. Thanks, Bob.
And
That's
I'm
awesome.
glad to be a partner in that company.
That's awesome. Fred
And
Thorne.
in tailored resource training. So I've
Hello.
been doing some other stuff for the last 32 years other than just consulting.
Oh, I'm sure. Fred Thorne says hello from Wendy and I. And Wendy says, good evening, beautiful people. This is great. What a background. Reed Richards says the deal or the professionals we set the expectation with the customer so they think that we're out of line, probably because we are. And our other SDL brother, Eric Howigi. Good evening, gentlemen. SNL, here we go. Ready to learn. There is so much experience on screen, leaders. So, question for you, or let me throw out an observation. I know we both started a long time ago, and the days before computer for me, we had a giant ledger book, and we had handwritten ROs that were attached to clipboards. And that's kind of how we did things. And I'm always to this day kick myself in the butt because it was 1986. I had gotten my first job in a car dealership as a service advisor. And at the time, I didn't know anything about the dealer world, the vendor world. I knew none of this. But I knew that I liked to do things efficiently. And in 1986, long before this thing called the MPI came along, I had an Excel spreadsheet that was model specific because I discovered that a 300 SD, Mrs. Jones's 300 SD had similar problems. So all the other 300 SDs came in, or the 380 SLs. They all had similar problems. So I had a model specific Excel spreadsheet that I printed off with little squares that I would hand to the technician, and I would explain to the customer, you know, cars like yours that come in oftentimes have similar problems to other ones. And to not inconvenience you, we're going to do a thorough exam, and we're going to check these items out here to make sure that you don't get stuck on the road. And of course, the technicians loved it because for them, it was easier to not forget to look at something. Everything was laid out. They were able to check all their things. I'm still kicking myself in the back because years later, I discovered this thing called an MPI that somebody else cashed in on. But now, fast forward to 2023, and you walk into a store, and what do you see the advisors have in their hands?
MPI form of some sort, usually digital.
Yes. For us old folk, tablets. But the young ones today, it's right on their phone, right? I mean, it's changed so dramatically. Whereas everything they're able to greet the customer. It's all right there. They check them in, and the technician goes through every step of the process and puts it right on their phone. Do you see great utilization out in the field?
Well, yes, I do, you know, because today, if you went back even 10 years ago, I would guess that half of the stores didn't have electronic multi-point inspections.
Yeah.
But, you know, I believe that the digital is the way to go. I'm an early adopter. 1979, I bought a Commodore 64 computer, which was really a gaming computer, but they said it was the first personal computer that you could get. So I went someplace and bought it. Went home, hooked it up to a little portable TV I had, and at 3:30 in the morning, I had completed what they told me was my first program that I had done. And so I hit the button and it said, "Hello, Bob. Hello, Bob. Hello, Bob. Hello, Bob." And I'm thinking, what the hell am I going to do with this thing? You know, I heard of computers, and Lotus was the only one that was available, you know, at the time. But, you know, that back then, that computer was like $4,000. You know, I mean, it was like you only had that if you had a big business. And so I found a guy because I was living in the Silicon Valley, Santa Clara, California. So through searching for about 6 weeks, I found a guy that was developing a spreadsheet for the Commodore 64. And so I got with that guy, And he said, man, I need somebody to test my stuff. I said, I need somebody that's got something for me to test. And back then it was like a cassette recorder. It was a tape, like a telephone answering machine. And the program was on that. You loaded it, and then you made sure that you had another blank, that you saved it. And so now you put your stuff on that, save it as whatever you wanted. And to me, that's what got me moving, because after I got those 64 stores, that computer came in handy. We'd go in every quarter for dog and pony shows. And then you'd have each of your stores, you'd be committed for your district or region. And then you'd have to go back, then, put your numbers in. You're still writing them in books, of what you're going to commit to, parts and stuff, because you got parts ledgers. And so I go to my room and I punch those numbers in, and I had the percentages of all the stores in those categories. And then it was so fast, not compared like today.
Right.
But it was like, you could see it going like a hell of a lot faster than I ever would have been. And then I'd print it out at a dot matrix, transfer it over to my paper. And then by 2:00, I'd be down at the pool, if it was the summertime one, sun tanning. And then after I'd go back upstairs, mine came out perfect, because after dinner, everybody had a controller sitting next to them, going through their history and looking at what they're committing to. And they just did what I did, what they did in the past, is probably what you're going to do in the future. So it should be somewhere around that. And that's how I got promoted to Chicago. They thought I was like some genius. And most of the group guys, theirs was just experience, and they were good, but not that good.
What's interesting is that just our whole perspective on how we perform our jobs back then and today. Like if I walk into a store today and let's say their DMS is down, I'm not going to mention any names, but there's a particular one that when it goes down, it seems to be down for most of the day. And these guys and gals freak out when they have to handwrite all the ROs, because once the handwritten ROs are done and the system comes back up, now they've got to input all that information back into the DMS and get everything up and running again. But back then, you're talking about it was fast. You see it going across the screen. But by today's standards, we would walk out.
Oh, yeah.
It's so slow, right?
Absolutely. But I think one of the things that happens is it wasn't until the early 90s where really all the stores started going to electronic write-up, Reynolds and Reynolds, CDK. My first store that I worked with was a Red McComb store, a big Ford store in San Antonio, which is where I moved to, and where my brother worked, and he told them that they should talk to me. And we're handwriting repair orders. And when I went to go there, they were switching to Reynolds and Reynolds. So the service director, he didn't really want anything to do with that. So I jumped on that because I go, hey, this has got to be better. Obviously it was rough at first, but it did get better. And, that was my first client. And then Red McCombs, who passed away a week ago Sunday, was absolutely a great individual. Hard as nails sometimes, outlandish quite a bit. But after I'd been there for, I think it was 3 months, and we turned that around, and I had to deal with the director. After 2 months, he was to introduce me to Red so I could get some more work. And he didn't do it. Well, in 90 days, Red dug me out and said, I want to know, there's somebody back there that's doing something. And so the general manager said, yeah, it's a guy, some guy, Bob, that they hired back there. And said, Michael Charbeneau's brother. And Red goes, well, get him up here. So he called me up there, and he goes, Bob, what are you doing back there? I said, making you money. And he goes, I've been running 25% decreases because of a little bit of road construction, and you're running 25 to 30% increases, and it's even more road construction right now. He goes, I want you to come to work for me. And I said, well, I'm really not looking for a job, Red. I've been working for other companies for 20 some years, and I have a consulting company now. So I'd be happy to help you in any stores that you had. They had 9 stores at the time. And he goes, no, you're going to work for me. And I said, Red, you can't make me work for you. I'll be happy to help you any way that I can. He goes, no, do you know what a parts and service director is? I said, kind of, this is the guy who runs those departments. And he goes, that's right. And ours are all over the board. He goes, so I'm putting you over all of them. And I go, so you have to work for me to do that. And I said, Brad, that sounds like probably a really great job and stuff, but that really wasn't what I was looking for. He goes, how much I'm paying you? So I told him, and he goes, I'll pay you double that every day in bonuses when you do good. And I go, I guess I work for you, Red. And we've got up to 38 stores in the 6 years that I worked for him, and learned a lot about body shops, because I had actually worked as a body shop and a kid for a while and turned our body shops around, which, it was, everything's a learning experience. Always be learning, ABL, always be learning, because you're going to need it. And you get to put in jobs that you don't know what to do. Just go learn. Go talk to the people that know how to do it. That's why SDL is so great. People on there, I'm on there. Am I really looking for the next promotion to something? Absolutely not. But I love our automotive, and I love listening to everybody. I'm 75 years old. I'm an avid mountain bike rider, and my mind is so good because I'm 2 days a week minimum. I'm working with service advisors, service managers on the drive. And I'm going to do that till I'm so old. And somebody said, when are you going to go sit on the couch? I said, when I can't get up from the couch. Or I guess when somebody goes, Bob, can you come help us? And it takes me 20 minutes to get across the service drive to answer a question. I said, but it always be learning. I pick up stuff all the time. And a lot of it is I just remember, because there are so many ways to do so many things. And by mind traveling from warm climates to cold climates, to small populations to large populations, first time I went up into like places up north, and they were doing things that we didn't do in California. But in California, Lamont knows, you dot your I's and cross your T's. The Bureau of Automotive Repair will be in there, and they'll arrest your guys if they're not doing something right. And I know from living through that. And then these guys can't do something that's easier. We can't do something that they're doing, that is actually easier than what we're doing. But, it's just, it's a changing world. And I think we're always adapting so much that sometimes we lose track. And we find something and somebody forces us to use a program. Okay, when electronic MPIs come out. Okay, there wasn't a lot. There was MPI.
Right.
That was the only one. I had one 6 months after that. But the internet didn't have what it needed to operate mine. Once the salesman got there and started watching TV and stuff, in the mid 90s, all the broadband width, they didn't have as much as we get at home. Yeah. So it was unsuccessful, so I went into the marketing side of it, but had that for like 4 years. In stores that weren't big, it worked pretty good. But what happens is they said, you're going to have this, it works great, and luckily MPI was a pretty good one and developed pretty fast over time. And I have a great deal of respect for Lee Sobel, because he knows what he's doing, and I think he might even be older than me. Nah, probably not.
Well, you got a lot of years in you. I want to get to a couple of comments here. Lamont Harris says, wow, you can finally see me. Thanks, Coach Mike Vogel. And Reed Richards, excuse me, I'm driving and my text-to-speech did not work. Yeah, that happens to me also. I call it Apple No Play. And Robert Allen Carvel says building blocks of progress to where we are today digitally. 100%. Steve Perry, good times at Red McCombs. And Melissa Ann Clammer says, good evening all. Good evening to you. Welcome. Reed Richards, ABL, your acronym for Always Be Learning. And Melissa Ann Clammer says, that is awesome to work on the drive with advisors. So important. We use Xtime with Video MPI, and video works amazing for customer trust and honesty. I just put out a video about that where I was able to capture some of that, which I'm going to put on my LinkedIn shortly. And we got Steve Papasella in the house. Auto retail is a great industry, but flawed when dealers operate sales and service like two separate companies. The resulting customer experience is fragmented as a result. People matter, but so does intelligent process. We must fill the gap between sales and service to amplify #FixedOPS if you desire the recurring customer beyond the one-time transaction. Absolutely 100%. I mean, it's advanced so much, and not just the tools, but I remember back in the day, in the aftermarket, we didn't work on appointments. It was people would call, you'd field the calls, the phones would ring off the hook sometimes. And then we went to this thing called the BDC, which helped out a lot because a lot of stores were so inundated with phone calls, they couldn't get to them all. So we've got some BDC folks on here. We've got Reed, we've got Wendy, and possibly a couple of others. So that's changed the business quite a bit as well, huh, Bob?
Oh, absolutely. And BDC is a great tool, both for getting customers in and answering the phones and helping them that way. You know, I built a BDC when I had a contract with Don Davis Auto Group, and built a BDC and ran their 5 stores, you know, till I decided I didn't like driving back and forth to Dallas. But it was 3.5 years. That BDC was absolutely great. But it's like the BDC, you know, gets ignored sometimes from service. Terrible. And they go, just, you know, you answer the phone, schedule appointments. You know, that BDC, it was easy for me because, you know, they were new. And so I showed them the software to use that we used. And then they would just, you know, answer the phone calls. And I'd say, anything you can't answer, they had a whiteboard. Write it on there. I'm gonna be by in the morning. I'm gonna be by in the afternoon. All of my stores were within 3 miles. So I just circled all day long. And I'd come back and I'd look at the stuff, and then we'd talk about it. We say, okay, here's what I want you to do on that one. Because what I found is I was still getting more than half of the calls were going to the advisors. And quite often that happens because they're asking questions. If we don't have a tight communication with the BDC of how to answer those, they can't answer them. So then they have to send them to the advisor, and that's kind of defeating our purpose. Yeah. You know, because appointments are great. They allow us to fill slacker times during the day. Yeah. You know, and people go, well, everybody wants to drop it off in the morning. Well, that's fine. Drop it off on the way to work, pick it up on your way home, you know, or, you know, we'll give you an Uber ride to your work, or, you know, we make it work. But it seems like we change so many things and don't get them completely done. You know, where we're doing it enough that we're out of trouble. You know, it's like the videos. Those are great. You know, my success in selling early on was how I made it through 5 auto centers. I didn't know how to run them. I just knew how to sell a bunch of stuff and get guys to do it. You know, but I showed people, I took them to their cars and I showed them what was going on and explained it to them. And we got the job. We had a pretty high percentage. You know, when right now the video, I think, is absolutely fantastic, because in a matter of 90 seconds, you can show the customer that's their car, listening to who's working on it, you know, which they've never seen the guy that works on their car. The independents, they see him. That's why they have more than 50% of the market, you know, and we don't, you know. So it's just things like that, you know, are tough to get all of those things done and require us having like SDL, having, having consultants that are specialized in an area that can come in and help you, get your people to understand, because, how much time do you have for training? I mean, it's tough. You bring an outside trainer in, and he's got to try and work between guys, because if you got 3 of the service advisors, how many are you going to take off the drive to train?
Right.
You can't do much. When I had Don Davis, we had 40 service advisors. We do lunchtime training on Tuesdays and Wednesdays and Thursdays. And I could have, all of the service advisors in for a full hour without disrupting business, and we fed them lunch and had a training for an hour. But not everybody has that luxury, to have a training center and enough people to send people to it, or take people out of the store for a whole day, and everybody else has to pick up the slack for them. So it's trying to figure out how to get those things done. So we really do everything that we're trying to do as good as we can do it, and not just enough to keep our head out of water. Okay, we're doing videos, but you're doing 30% videos on your inspections.
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
What about the 70% of the other customers? Granted, you're making progress. I'm working at a store like that right now. We were doing none. They said we did videos because we had it. And then, the owner wanted to see a report. And when they showed him the report, he goes, "What the hell?" He goes, I thought we paid for that. And where
They
do I
do
see
pay
the
for it.
customer got a video? And then,
handsomely.
yeah. And then now I work with them, helping them. And we're about to 50% right now. But, it's tough because there's guys at that store. It's been there a long time. They've been there 35 years, so you do whatever you need to do. Yeah. The shop foreman is a working shop foreman. So he doesn't touch a computer, and so I gave him an IT guy. So moved one of the high producing young techs next to him that they were kind of friends anyway. So now he does all that for him. You just do whatever you need to do to get it done. But it's so hard if you don't have the people to give the time to, or figure out when or how you can do that. So it's never ending, and there's some great performers in here that are setting numbers that nobody ever saw before, but it's still tough. It's like right now, the push is on for customer service. Give the customers, exceed their expectations, which are very high. And they're set by all the places that are our competitors. They're telling you, I get you in 15 minutes. Okay, customer, that sounds great. Except what are you going to do to my car in 15 minutes? What are you going to check? I mean, what are you doing in 15 minutes? You can't do a service on a car in 15 minutes. But the customer doesn't know that. So they look at us and we don't know how to explain that to them, or to make sure that when the BDC has a very good guide to go by that answers every question, so that when they call somebody else, they're not going to get a better call.
Well, here's the thing also, Bob. The aftermarket does have a distinct advantage when it comes to building that relationship. And as you and I have done over many years, we walk the customer out to the car. We show them right then and there exactly what's going on. Right. So the trust factor is 100% right there. At a dealership, they don't have that luxury. They just don't. So oftentimes the car's dropped off. You're dropping it off for an oil change. You're thinking $70 is your bill. You go back to work and you get that phone call that you need, $1,800 worth of work on your car. They had no idea. There is a wall, right? So I just finished a video. I shared it in the SDL thread, and I'm going to share it also online, where it walks the customer through the entire process. So peel back the curtain, show them what happened so they have an idea. This is a 20-minute or so edited video that shows the entire process. So the customer seeing this, now they understand, oh, this is an edited video and it took 21 minutes, right? So it takes a little bit longer to do that work. It sets the expectations and it shows them exactly what happens every step of the way. So we if we don't know what's happening, we're afraid to make a decision. But if we know what's happening, how likely is it that we're going to make a decision, Bob?
Well, much more likely. And that's why it's so important. It's a walk around. It's really reception,
Yeah.
in that we have that short period of time to set the expectations, to give them an idea of what we're going to do. And if they dislike that, they'll tell you,
Yeah.
like that we're going to do a good checkout on your car. And I'm going to give you a report as soon as we have that.
Right.
And because what we don't want to happen is you not know something that could cause you problems later on. And tell them how we're going to do that. And I'm going to report it to you. I'm going to tell you, we'll give you an estimate on it and answer any questions that you've got. Anything that we tell them we're going to do and how we're going to do it. But everything has to be in snippets that are like 60 seconds. And you have to learn that 60 seconds.
Yeah.
And you have to think about, I tell advisors, your job now is to be like a carpenter. Measure twice, cut once. Think twice, speak once.
Yeah.
And know what you're going to say, because you're saying it so many times that you have to be you. It can't be a script.
Nope.
It has to be you. But what you're trying to do is make sure the customer understands and that you understand what you're trying to accomplish with that, to make it easier for the customer and for us to give us just a little more time and to have that connection. Because the connection isn't just the customer. They didn't wake up in the morning to go find a service advisor to connect to.
Right.
They hope when they get there, they get somebody, that takes care of them. But we can do both things. What they really want is they're there to take care of their car. Even though they said, I'll need an oil change and a tire rotation, that's maintenance. We've got all the information that we never had before to look and see what have they done so far. Have they ever been here before? So that we know they came in. If they had an appointment, we should be ready to ask some questions, even if they've been a regular customer and you never wrote them up, which is going to be half of your customers.
Right.
Introduce yourself like you don't know them, because you don't know them, and say, I'm going to ask you some questions about your driving habits and stuff. Since you're coming in for maintenance, I want to make sure my recommendations fit your driving habits and they fit our severe driving conditions because of the heat and the traffic here in Houston. So, it's like you said, but getting that trained, you can tell somebody, they can agree with it, but if they don't practice it, it won't happen. But because it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable. And that's why, at SDL, we were talking about the videotape. When I first went to the corporate office as a trainer, they had an outside consulting company come in to train me and see what I knew about training. What do you think the first thing they did? And this was in 1980. What do you think the first thing they did? They professionally videotaped me, with a presentation.
Wow.
And I was ready for it. I'm going, I've been doing this, I've been doing this right now for like 13 years, So I did it, and then I watched it. I went, holy crap. How many times do I say,
That's key.
and, yeah. And
key to do that in your training.
So you have a chance to really see yourself and be that self that you see in your mind. And a lot of people, it's very uncomfortable. So it can't be downgrading when you do it. It's the purpose to learn. When people go through training, they'll watch videos. Okay, I tell them when they watch my videos, I don't want you doing anything else. Your focus needs to be on that 15-minute to 20-minute video, because that's as long as mine are. But your goal is that when you're finished with that, you could explain to somebody else what you just heard. Right. And if you can't, then you better listen to it again, because you're going to have to be doing role plays and you're not going to be able to do them. It's just going to take you longer to get there. So be committed, get a little better every day, always show up. Complacency in service advisors and managers. It's so easy to get there. You had a great year last year.
Oh, forget about it. They're done.
Are you doing better than a lot of people? you're number three. Well, your owner wants you to be number one. And your advisors come in, they get through the groove. I tell somebody, when you first start as an advisor, you show up, you don't know anything, you listen to everybody. If the porter tells you to do something, you do, okay, I'm going to try that. You listen to 6 different advisors tell you stuff. And then when finally you're making enough money, you're on full commission now, and you're making enough money that you can pay your bills, and you only cry a couple days a week on the way home, then the learning curve slows down.
I want to get to a couple of comments. Melissa Ann says, I will check it out, Paul. Jerry Davis, sorry I'm late to the party. Oh, you're never late. It's on the internet. It lives on forever, my friend. Reed Richards, crazy that the BDC is a new concept, for some, it is a new concept, believe it or not. And you see that in the practice of what you do. Melissa Ann says a lot of phone calls get transferred too many times and customers lose interest immediately. Yes. It's important to capture that phone call and direct it immediately to the right person. Now, I'm going to add to that on our technology piece now. There's such great technology today. A thing called phone pops. Okay. A customer calls into the store, and on the computer screen, they are made aware, hey, if Paul Meier's calling and Paul Meijer happens to have a car that's in the service department today, they'll see that. Hi, Paul, are you calling about your car that's in for service today? Right off the bat, that puts them at ease. Or if they have a part that's on special order, maybe they're calling to find out if the part's in. They call up. Hey, Paul, I see we've got a special order part for you that looks like it just came in. Are you calling to schedule that? So technology is very, very important. And to Melissa's point here, too many transfers, utilize the technology, leverage it, and you will solve a lot of that mystery. Jerry Davis says, Robert is one of the best in our business. Great choice, Paul. I will agree with you 110%, Jerry Davis. Joe
Thanks,
Chambers.
Jerry. Okay, I know you that cappuccino.
Joe Chambers says, Robert Charbeneau, there's a wealth of knowledge that is unparalleled in today's day and age. Proud to know both Bob and Paul Meijer well enough to call them friends. Thank you, Joe. We feel exactly the same way about you, man. And Sunday mornings, I look forward to. And believe me when I tell you, I never got up early on a Sunday morning for anybody or anything. But I do it for SDL because it feeds my head and it feeds my heart. And it's nice to share with everybody because every week I pick up something from somebody. Doesn't matter how long. We're in this business, Bob, you and I, 94 years, but every week we pick just a little something up from somebody. And Melissa Ann says, yes, 100%. He is correct. A missed phone call or misrouted phone call can hurt customer loyalty or even retention. I've seen so many times. Me too, because I mystery shop as part of what I do. Joe Chambers says service managers have such a hard time finding time to work on the business in the first place, let alone the training. Man, with everything that you're expected to do, nothing could be more true than that statement right there. And Lamont Harris
Joe has a tie on. His picture had a tie. He had a tie and a sports coat or suit coat.
Lamont Harris says, dead on, Joe. I was wondering what others' routines look like in order to capture the day and work on the business much as possible. The whirlwind can grab you. And Melissa Ann says, my brand is never just an oil change or quick. We have to be very honest and upfront with our appointment and times because we are usually booked out 2 months, sometimes more. Wow, what brand do you work for? Because I got to tell you, I wouldn't wait 2 months for anybody. Well, I wouldn't say anybody, but that's a tough call right there because everybody expects stuff instantly. I know I drove into an express service one time and the person said to me, what day would you like to come in? I'm here now. Yeah, but what day next week can you come back? I said, I think the sign says express service and I'm here now. Doesn't that mean like now? I'm sorry, we can't work with you until next week. And I left and I got it done somewhere else. So 2 months. Wow, that's stronger than garlic. People wait for that. That's incredible. Joe Chambers says the whirlwind sometimes been reading Lamont Harris, a little Ford disciplines. Right about that, Melissa Ann, 30 days out is a rush in a JLR store. Oh, okay. Now I understand. They may not have any choice. Melissa Ann says, Joe Chambers, definitely it's a challenging brand, but we have to tell customers reality rather than sugarcoat it. You'll never get hurt by the truth. Joe says, spot on, Melissa Ann. Got to run, friends. Sorry for the short visit. No, thanks for stopping in, man. Fred Thorne says, great show, gentlemen. Thank you. Robert Allen Carvel, having a dealership in CIT, continuous improvement team, is key in finding the root causes for service issues. Bob mentioned the whiteboard. It's a great tool. 100%, man. You can't forget what's written down. I remember everything that I write down. And Steve Apicella, are dealers in the business of selling cars or also earning recurring service customers? It's easy to tell where a priority lies. Take a look at your website and anemic post-vehicle sale communication methods. When we throw the kitchen sink at the customer acquisition to buy a vehicle, after the vehicle sale, it feels like the transaction and therefore the relationship has concluded. Customer defection begins right there. And Steve DiMarzio, Bob needs to be cloned to help all dealerships. Eric Howiggy, great show. Jerry Davis, ABL, huge. And Melissa Ann, I am Land Rover. Yes, I gathered that. So, wow. We covered a lot of stuff here today, Bob.
That's been great fun.
Reminiscing over the old days of what we did back then and a lot of the changes that happen now.
Hey, just happy to still be around making them.
You know, when you're a car guy or a car gal, you don't realize that nobody tells you when you get into this business that nobody ever leaves alive, or very few do. And then 5 years later, you're in 5 years, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, I can't believe I'm here 5 years already. But man, what fun, right? I couldn't think of doing anything different. And you being 75, you got a lot of good years ahead of you, my friend, a lot.
I'm planning on it.
Me too. I'm a few years behind you. But yeah, I couldn't imagine getting out for any particular reason. Anything else? We went a bit over our 30 minutes, but anything else you wanna touch on before we leave?
All I'd like to say is I appreciate everybody that showed up, because you guys are the ones that are making the changes. You guys are going to be the ones that keep going to the top, because you don't stop learning. Always be learning, because if you're prepared for what your next goal is, you got a good chance of getting there. And if you can get that instilled in your service advisors, that when they show up to work, that they kind of have a plan, their days are going to be so much better. And, we have to help them, because they get complacent. And if we don't have a little rah-rah or know them personally and know what they're trying to accomplish, well, we can't really help them very well. So, we're a people business, and that's why the base of our business has been the same, just a lot of technology changing it, and the cultures are changing, both in the employees. The old guys like me, it was completely different when I was working in a shop. It was completely different, but luckily I've been able to change because I had to change for the people that worked and helped me be successful and work with them. Right now today, there's words we never would have mentioned, life balance. What the
What's
heck
that?
is this balance? The balance is that you get home before it's time to go to work. Then you put in a long day. Half days are, it's 24 hours in a day, so 12 hours minimum is a half day.
That's the way it was. Yeah.
Anyway, I really appreciate you guys' time. Any of you can reach out to me for anything at all. I have stuff to sell, but I'm not trying to sell you anything. But if you need some help on something and I can help, I'd be happy to.
If you're on this call or watching it on the replay, if you're not connected to Bob, by all means, he's tagged in the post, so make sure you connect with him. If you're not connected with me, I would love to connect with you, because as we grow our network, there's vast levels of experience here, and we can all benefit each other. As my good friend Paul Machine always says, a rising tide lifts all boats, and we want to make sure that we do that for everybody. I see here Melissa Ann says, I'm going on 17, almost 18. It flew by. Yeah, I believe that.
Wow. And it does. Hey, also, anybody that wants to connect with me, I've got a lot of advisors that connect with me, and I love that because, it's a lot of them are new guys coming into the business, and they ran across me some way. And so I connect with them, and send them a little message that, if anything I can do to help you, I will.
Awesome. Well, Bob, thank you very much for spending your Sunday night with us and sharing with the audience. If you're watching on live, thank you. If you're watching on the replay, thank you. If you see value or you enjoyed what we discussed, by all means, share it with one of your connections. You may make their day. So,
Thank
Bob,
you, Paul.
hang
You
on
are a
as we
tremendous
sign off
source.
here. Thank you very much. Don't go away, Bob. And
Okay.
we'll see you next week on Sunday Night Live. Have a safe and successful week next week.